Hello everyone and welcome back to the AFL Fantasy Fanatics head-to-head series. It is back for another season and we've got plenty of players that we're putting head-to-head and discussing with each episode with a very special guest jumping on. So also put in the comments below who you guys want to see in the head-to-head series because I've got a list, but if you guys want some other players, I'm happy to put them in. But today we'll be looking at a couple of dogs forwards with the news of Adam Treloar missing the first 8 to 10 weeks of the season. These two dogs are going to be very, very fantasy relevant. But joining me, a very special guest. He kicked off the season with us last year with Marshall and Cherry, but we're going to the forwards this time. We've got Warnie from the Traders. Warnie, mate, how are you? How's the pre-season been shaped? It's been a busy one for you lads.
Great, Bales. Yeah. It's been a very big preseason. I think every year is. It feels like this has been one of the busiest ever. We obviously we start cracking at the start of December, and we're probably almost to a point of taking a little bit of a feed up a little bit. We get into a bit of a routine now because we've knocked out all of our club previews and the AFL record stuff. That's all gone to print now. So exciting when that's out on shelves on Feb 13. So make sure you grab that at your newsagent when that gets there. But yeah, we've sort of got through a fair chunk of stuff in this time, and the timing's pretty good for us because we're back at work next week, this week actually going back with the kids on Thursday. So it's going to be busy there. So we thought we'd get a lot of stuff done leading up to now, but now it gets real. We've got this head-to-head series. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. We're a couple of weeks away from those pracky matches, and yeah, we're not that far away from that round one lockout.
Exactly. And we've unfortunately having a lot of injuries. So with the AFL record, hopefully you guys don't have to do too many edits and everything like that. It seems like every player that we're looking at is going down. But one of the players that has gone down, unfortunately, he'd been good to us last year, played most games. But Adam Treloar, unfortunately, has gone down with injury. Just had a few calf strains over the pre-season. So he's missing the first 2 to 3 months of the season. So Ryley Sanders and Matt Kennedy, I think, are two really relevant players, especially in the forward line. So we're going to be putting those two head-to-head because I think a lot of people are probably going to be deciding between the two. So Warnie will be taking Ryley Sanders today. I'll be taking Matt Kennedy. And we'll start off with our guest with Ryley Sanders. So Warnie, why don't you run us through Ryley Sanders, his fantasy outlook for 2025?
Yeah, well, I guess I've got Sando. He's a local Lonnie boy, so grew up not very far away from where I live, actually. So, and I get to work with his old man. So his dad is a teacher at my school, so very close to my heart. And he's a great kid and loves his fantasy footy too. So that's a good thing. But yeah, he's obviously going into his second season. So fantastic rookie last year, and I think that's something that we knew that he would be going in. He averaged 125 in the under-18 championships. Like, he was the best of the players in the under-18. So we sort of know his pedigree. He's good. He's a midfielder. He racks up. But his season last year was, it was interesting because we didn't get to see, I guess, his best because he did wear a vest in 5 of his 14 games. So that's probably where, you have that little natural I guess the natural discount that he's there because of the vest, and we didn't see that. But we saw some great, like, he debuted and racked up 20-odd touches, and I guess the worst thing was that we did see the vest in some of those games, and we were, as fantasy coaches, and us too, I guess, as fans of him, we were a little bit disappointed with that. But fingers crossed going into his second year that things can change. So some of the cool things that we did see, I guess, when he did get dropped to the VFL, he racked up there massively. So he played 7 games for Footscray and went at 116, and it was obviously massive to do that. He gets his stats in different ways. So he had that sort of mix in the AFL as that half-forward midfielder. He one of the VFL games, he kicked 3 goals, and I think that was off to a cracking start. I think it was on a Friday afternoon. I do remember that at work, and we were having a bit of a chat with Sando Senior about that as he was racking up there. But another game in the VFL, he had like 14 tackles. So he can do it in different ways, and I think I am bullish on him being better. The natural improvement isn't always a nice thing to talk about, but there is that because of the vest. If he can avoid that, that's a big thing there. And as well, he's their future. And this is probably the thing with Treloar being out, that he's probably the more like-for-like replacement. So you're going to talk about Kennedy, and he's a gun and can play in the midfield. But if they are looking for that future and looking for someone that is going to play similar to what Treloar does, I think that is going to be Sando, that sort of burst of speed, those types of things that he is there because he can run forward like we see with Treloar as well. So, yeah, that's probably the main thing. So I wrote my article for AFL website. I had the Bulldogs as my team, and so talked about Kennedy as well. But in that, like, I sort of see him as one of those players. Like, I put him down as a draft sleeper in that category because, you know, sitting that average of 70 next to him is definitely better than that. So, yeah, that's what we want to see. So that 70, that's without the vest. So, you know, low 60s and price where he is. So it's 656. And there was the news last week or so with Filippo, and they were exactly the same price. And he could be that nice replacement. But this Treloar news really boosts that. So centre bounce is where what we want to see some increase in. The Bulldogs do have a pretty tight rotation, and that's something we have seen. Like the sort of Ed Richards was the man that went in there last year and became that fourth banana, because you've got Treloar, Bont, Libba. They're the three that they were having most of the time. Ed Richards was the fourth banana there, but they equally did that. And that was a pretty tight group. Like, it didn't go too far outside of that. So like Sando for his season, it was 28%, which is a pretty decent start there. But if he could pump that up a little bit, which he should be able to do, because the 8 to 10 weeks for Treloar, like, he was battling all preseason too. So that was some of our mail out of the Dogs there. And so now they've pretty much gone, yep, these calves are no good, or the calf, or whatever he's got exactly. We need to put him on ice for a while. So he's going to have an opportunity and a run at it. The issue is that it is Bevo, and that's probably our big flag in all of this. And we do have Matt Kennedy to talk about, which you are probably about to do. And this is where these guys could almost be battling for a position, or battling for the time as such.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. And just before I was about to go on to Kenny's, I just had like one more point with Sanders as well, is that obviously, as you see, is that natural scorer. So you're banking on the natural progression, but you've got the backing of he was like highest averaging player in his draft class in terms of all the like under 18 championships and everything like that. So he's got the pedigree. Do you see him being that? Obviously, it's the thing is, I think it's Kenny and him battling out probably that fourth guy. Do you see Sanders being that fourth guy ahead of Kenny, just because he's that light for light replacement, whereas Kenny can split his time between forward and midfield?
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing for me. And this is why it is still very much up in the air. These pracky games that we'll get to watch will hopefully tell a little bit of a story. And again, like we do joke about, it's Bevo. Bevo will spin the magnets. He will try different things. And so that's one of the things. If something's not working, I'm sure that we can see something happen there. So that's a worry. Like, that's probably one of the things. But I think he might be just ahead if I was the coach, and because I love Sando, maybe that's what it is. But I think that he does become that bit of a like for like. They're looking to their future. That's what they can do there, and give him that little apprenticeship. Maybe he's the one that gets that first go, because as you'll talk about with Kennedy, yep, he can play through the midfield, but he's probably got more strings to his bow with what he can do. And so depending on what else can transpire this preseason, that's where things might happen. Whereas I do believe Sando is that half forward as he played into the midfield, and we'll hopefully see that with that uptick, because he'll just get that extra opportunity. There's one less body there in that midfield.
Yeah. Do you see the sub at all? Because obviously Bevo does funny things. He's put Bailey Dale, McRae, Daniel, like Sand's obviously the sub. Do you see that being an issue at all? Or do you think that Sanders has done his apprenticeship and then he might get that full game time this year?
No, I think it can be. And we probably did see with that sub too last year that maybe a little bit, people might have called a bit of attitudinal stuff. Like, he did spit the goo a couple of times. But yeah, let's hope, like, he's dominating this preseason. Every little thing that I've heard in the media, but then also from inside the four walls, is sounding like he's doing what he can. He's one of the most professionals. Like, I know, talking to his dad, like, they'll be having dinner, and before anyone's finished type thing, he's down rolling out a bit of a corky or something on the mat. You know, he's always doing everything he can, and joked about it on our podcast that he was in the gym every time I was there. But that was literally the thing. In school holidays, I can get to the gym more. It doesn't really show when you're looking at my guts, but he was always there. And that's the thing. Like, every single day of that preseason or the off season, or whatever you want to call it, the Christmas period where they're not at the club, he was there. He was doing the thing, and yeah, he's looking pretty good. And the thing I love about him too, like, he almost went in last year looking like a man. You know, he's got a man-sized body. He's played some pretty decent level football, and that can only be better 12 months on.
Yeah, the thing I like is that averaging the 115 in VFL, so like it's a proper comp, like playing against men, and he's his first year and he's averaging that. So he's definitely someone that we're going to be having to look at because I think he's very, very relevant. But also Matt Kennedy is another one of those players that's relevant. So made the move over very, very last minute, like a lot of those moves in the trade period were, to the Dogs, and we thought, here we go. He's just pretty much going to have the same role, and he's almost worse because you got Bevo, and then also it's a stacked midfield. But with Treloar now gone, and obviously Philippou for our forward line gone, we need to pick another forward. And I feel like Kennedy could be someone that we could look at. So I've just had a look at his numbers from last year through the help of DFS Australia. So if you guys aren't using it, make sure you go and use it. And also shout Mort to Coffee as well while you're at it, because he does great work over at DFS. But so last year, 5 games Matt Kennedy played where he had over 50% CBAs. And I'm going to remove, as Warnie said, one of the games where he only played 50% game time because we're not going to count it because he was sub. So the 5 games he played a full game and he was at least 50% CBAs, he averaged 105.8 in those games. So it had some scores of 102, 85, 97, 111, and then highlighted by against Hawthorn, a 134 with 33 disposals in that game. So he was everywhere in that game as well. He's got the pedigree. He's averaged well over 100. Roy's talked about it. Obviously, being the Carlton supporter, he's averaged over 100 whenever he gets the role. And he can, when he's got that role, he scores just as well as any forward that we've got available for us this season. Obviously, the only issue with him being at Carlton and then potentially the Dogs has been he's got strengths as both, like we were talking about with Sanders, has probably hasn't got those. Kennedy, we've seen he's played in defence. He's played up forward. He's played in the midfield. He's obviously played as sub. He's been starting sub and subbed out. So he's just a guy that can do almost everything, which unfortunately in this case is not necessarily a good thing. But with Treloar being out, that opens up the opportunity. So I think it will be Sanders v. Kennedy for that role. And it's going to be interesting if they go with the proven guy that's done it for a number of seasons in that role, or if they're going to go for the young guy that's got the bright future, that's got the junior numbers to back it up, that they're hoping, because obviously Tassie's coming in a couple of years. They probably want to keep Sanders on their list instead of letting him go. So they probably don't want to annoy him too much by making him sub and playing up forward. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they balance that out along with the likes of Bont and Libba, because Libba's obviously had his own injury issues. So do they rest him a little bit more this year because Treloar's out, and then does Kenny and Sanders get that bump? So I think both will see over 40% CBAs, I'd imagine, with it being Bont, Libba, and Ed Richards being the main 3. So I think Kenny's got the proven scoring history in that role, but Sanders has got the junior numbers to back it up. So Warnie, obviously with Kennedy, because he's got all those strings to the bow, is that more of a worry for you compared to Sanders because of the fact that he can play forward or defence or any other role?
That can be the deciding factor, and I guess, and there's 135k between them as well, so you get a little bit cheaper Sando for what could be a very similar output. I think for both of them, they need things to go right for them. They need things to be their way for that to work. So, like, even looking at their looking at Kenny, average 77, so that does have 5 games where he's averaged 105.8. So, that does boost that up a little bit as well. Sandoz is, and you can make your own narratives and tell your own stories, but then Sandoz, he had 5 games in a vest, so that brings his down. So they could, in a way, like without both of those, and it is cherry picking stats, makes them a pretty similar sort of average as such as a player. So I guess we just need to see what those roles are going to be and where that is. And you do make a great point about Libba as well. Like, that's a factor in this too, I think. Does he get a rest at some point? So that can only help. And even Bont, throw that in there, because like he's a bit of a, you don't want to call him Mr. Fix-It, but they sometimes need him to go forward. And depending on what's happening with Jamara and how long that's taking, I don't think that's going to be the way that they'll really try to run to begin with, because I think they need Bont to be there. And, we like to talk Brownlow Bont, and he'll be doing everything he can and needs to play in that midfielder role to do everything right for the Bulldogs, but also for him to get the best out of himself. So that's where there could be that little bit of opportunity. And you did throw out a number, 40% each or whatever, and they could be there to get that sort of fourth banana number over these, well, at least those first few weeks. So if we're talking about Treloar's prognosis there, 10 weeks. And if there's any player, Treloar is someone that might go longer than what they're saying as well, as we've seen plenty of soft tissues with him over the time. So yeah, we should get a good, half a dozen weeks out of it. And as someone like a Sanders, where is Price, or Kennedy as well, if you wanted to say that, their price is going north, and therefore you might be able to make some decisions around that. And we haven't mentioned either, these guys don't have an early buy, so it's a great thing. Like, they're a great team to be considering getting a player from, and if whoever's going to be the best of them could end up being a bit of a knockout pick. But I'm getting there and thinking, if Sanders is the one, he's 135k cheaper. He's probably more likely that that's his role, whereas Kennedy could do a couple of other things.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, looking here, I just had a look at even his numbers last year where, and this is with games that he wasn't the sub and he played full games. And obviously we talk about versatility, but when Kenny's in other roles, he doesn't necessarily score great as well. So I'm looking at games here where he either played in the forward line or was started on the bench. And there was one game, actually I'll remove that because he did play midfield. But the games where it's saying here, like, he played a full game and he either started on the bench or was on the forward line, he had some bad scores. So, like, there's some scores of like 47, 58, 63. There was a 36 against Port Adelaide there as well, 56, 61. So there's some bad scores. Like, that's a 6-game average of 53.5 from averaging 80% time on ground. So it's not great reading when you sort of see that he's got that floor that he can go so low. Whereas I feel like Sanders is the guy that's got, because he's got the natural scoring. If he's playing forward, he's going to push up the stoppages anyway, and he will just find a way to get the ball. So I feel like his floor will be higher as well, which that does scare me a bit about Kennedy. And obviously, it doesn't make too much of a difference, but Jack McRae and Caleb Daniel both being out of that team, both didn't really go to a huge amount of CBAs, but they would sometimes push up to the stoppage and get involved. Whereas I feel like with Treloar out, if one of them playing the midfield, the other one could also roll up. So both could actually score well, and it might not be sort of one gets the brilliant role and one gets the other. So could you start both? Or do you think it is a decision between one or the other?
It's interesting. I reckon structures maybe not both, but they're both definitely in play, and we'll know more, I guess, moving forward too. The other name that is worth a little bit of a flag there, especially because that's what it was earlier in the season, and that was that chat, I guess, with Sando Senior about Harms. He's another one in there that sort of makes a little bit of a needle mover. But yeah, you look at like Sanders there. First game he had 15 touches in his 3 quarters, or less than 3 quarters that he played. But then he went 22 touches, 20 touches, 23 touches in those next 3 games. So you're seeing that he's got the ability to get peel, and that's what the game's all about, especially in AFL Fantasy.
Exactly. And there was that, I'm just trying to find up on my phone, actually. There was that pre-season game that he played. I think it was against Hawthorn in the pre-season.
It was. We commentated that game at York Park, yeah. And he was
he
up.
went,
I think he
went really, really
well.
well.
Close to a ton, I reckon. He was very,
have a look.
very good in that, because I think it might have even been 30 disposals from memory. It was very good. It was an interesting game because obviously in pre-season games, everyone's a little bit depleted. Did you find the exact number there?
Yeah. Do you know how many he had? 30, like what you just said. So yeah, he had exactly 30. Scored the 92 because obviously didn't had a lot of handballs there, not many marks, tackles, getting bruised free footy pre-season. But the fact that he found 30 touches against Hawthorn, which obviously had been difficult to score on last year, probably not as much in pre-season, but the ability that he has to still get 30 touches is still there.
I think that's the thing. I don't think we're going to question his ability to get points. It's going to be the role will help it be better, and that's what I think it's all going to be about, as long as Bevo keeps that bloody red vest or green one away from him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's come to the time where we will decide who we're going to pick at the head-to-head battle between two. You've probably got a few indicators throughout the episode who we're going to be siding with, but Warnie, who are you going to be siding with out of the 2 dogs forwards?
I'll back in Sando. I think we need to. A little bit cheaper, and I think that he's probably got less things that can go against him not playing that role. Geez, did that make any sense?
Yes,
pretty much. Yeah. I feel like his role's going to feel like it might be a little more secure, whereas Matt Kennedy, he might have to do a couple of other things.
Yeah, and I'm starting with Sanders as well. I think that over 130k or near 130k does make a big difference. That can be the difference between you getting a potentially like a mid-price midfielder and getting someone up around that million, like a Tom Green or a Connor Rosie or Taranto or someone even better than that. Or it might be different when you're getting maybe a Matt Flynn, if people had them in there, and maybe getting a Darcy or a Sweet or something like that. That 130K could come in handy. So I think that's a big thing. But also, it's obviously a very big watch in pre-season as well and early in the season to see who's got that role. But I'm thinking Sanders is the guy that might just be ahead. But I'm looking at their current ownership as well. Sanders is upwards of 13% now. So he is up towards, let me just get the stat up.
He's definitely trending up.
Yeah, 13.6% for Sanders, and then Matt Kennedy is up at 6%. So they've risen a little bit over the last couple of days, obviously with the Trelaw news and hearing the notes out of Bulldogs train. The other thing I did actually hear about Sanders as well was that Bevo was saying that his two-way running had gotten a lot better in the off-season, and that's what he's been seeing in the training, which I think that was part of the reason why he ended up getting dropped. I think that was Bevo said he needed to work on a few things from his game, but he certainly has done that, and I think it'd be a big season for both him and Matt Kennedy. Have you got
his two-way running's very good? If you remember that game, I think it was in Gather Round over in Adelaide Oval where he picked up the ball and ran backwards and told to turn around the other way. So maybe he's working on that one as well.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have either of these guys on your side? Have you got currently Ryley Sanders?
My team at the moment, I just did the very simple vanilla. Is it vanilla? Just went Philippou to Sanders for the time being. I think my team is very much in a very state of just wait and see. If I really was playing this without doing content, I reckon I'd just keep it sitting there until about the end of February where I'll start having a real good crack. But yeah, I just went there and it's sitting, that structure's feeling okay for me at the moment. So that's why I've gone with that move at the moment. So looking forward to watching all these pracky games and seeing exactly where they're at. We get our first look at the Bulldogs. They're playing against the Bombers in one. So I'll definitely be watching that on the Saturday afternoon. I think it's the 15th of February.
Yeah, that's right around the corner as well, just over a couple of weeks away, which is fantastic. So, Sanders is also currently sitting for me, sitting there F2 behind Jack McRae, but obviously the F1 spot is been a big talking point this preseason. So whether he stays at F2 or F3 is going to be waiting to see. But yeah, currently got Sanders sitting in there. But beautiful. That is the first episode of the Head-to-Head series wrapped up. We're away for 2025. But Warnie, thank you very much for jumping on once again for the very first episode. Always a pleasure chatting fantasy with you. I'm sure everyone does, but where can the people find you across the socials, and what can everyone be expecting for the rest of the preseason? Obviously, the club previews are wrapped up, and we're moving into a lot more of the juicy preseason match sim content coming up.
Yeah, at AFL Fantasy is the official handle, so you can. I'm pretty much behind that, getting lots out there, so you can pretty much see all of our content through there. We've got a couple of podcasts a week coming up, so lots of different things in the feed for that, which is exciting, and plenty of articles, plenty of things going on, and we've got our Patreon rolling as well now, so you can check that out if you want some bonus extra content from us at DT Talk, and we're just excited about this season coming up because there's lots of new innovative things and all the stuff that you do. Bales is awesome. We love to see different members of the community just pumping out different things, and it keeps the community vibrant, and we love it.
Yeah, no, beautiful. No, thanks, Roy. It's got that time when the Head-to-Head series gets going. It's pretty much daily content and daily stuff. So we're away for 2025. So, but yeah, all the links for all the descriptions of Patreon, everything are in the description below of the podcast and video. So make sure you guys do check them out if you guys haven't already. You can find me at BAILSDT across the socials as well. And you can find us at AFL Fantasy Fanatics. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, please subscribe there and also leave a like on the video. And also if you are listening to the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and review. That'd be very much appreciated. Next episode, episode 2, I'll be having another special guest. We got Mitch from the Ball Boys jumping on. And we're going to be chatting about a couple of premium midfielders with one of them, potentially one of my Crowy boys featuring in there. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And until next episode, we'll catch you then. See ya.